So I am a practitioner in this area. Of course, climate emergency is a big issue to ourselves, and then we should remember United Kingdom is one of the first countries call for the global actions tackling this challenge. That is our proud. Secondly, I have to say, climate change is so complex. It is not an easy question one country can solve it. We need to call all member states work together. Otherwise, if we, the only country, work on this, it will be meaningless. So we do need these leaderships, role model types, call more member states join us together. And then we also have to say, in this element, there are a few pillars we need to think about. First one, we need to invest into technology, allow the low carbon technologies kick in, and then can reduce the carbon emissions. Secondly, we also need to think about alternatives. We need to have green bus strategy, allow people can use more public transportation, and also they are clean transportations. We also invest into cycling and the walk programs, allow people to have alternative to use. And last but not least is, if we do think about climate change seriously, why we need a green belt to build our house. So I think this is a whole lot of issues. We need to really consider it systematically. And then this is complex issues we need to spend time to think about. And as a political party, I think Conservatives have a huge commitment to it. So we bring the net zero emission by 2050, and that is a realistic program.
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate that the Green Party's manifesto is the only manifesto that is going to reach carbon zero by 2030. All of these policy ideas sound nice. They were probably at one point our policies, and we're really welcoming of the fact that many of the other parties are now taking on board our recommendations that we've been pushing on for the last 50 years. But ultimately, they are just not enough. First of all, they are not ambitious enough. They're not planning on reaching carbon zero by 2030. And I don't actually think they're going to meet the target that they are planning to make, because they are failing to understand the transformation that our economy needs to go through if we want to reach that target. And failing to understand how we're going to have to transform our relationship with our environment, and transform our relationship with nature in order to build a sustainable future that's going to work for all of us. The Green Party are going to change our economy, create thousands of new jobs in moving to renewables. We're going to reboot the repair and the repair economy, so we have a much more of a circular system rather than constant consumerism. We're going to invest in walking, cycling, as well as public transport, so that people aren't trapped in their cars. But ultimately, I think one of the most exciting policies is bringing in a carbon tax. And that is going to be a tax that will be on all fossil fuel extraction and all fossil fuel and energy that's coming into the UK. And that will mean that fossil fuel companies are compelled to move against fossil fuels quickly. So it's going to very quickly rise over 10 years. And we will be pairing that with incentives for them to be moving into the renewable sector, with training and funding for small businesses to move into that as well. We're going to have a carbon minister who's going to ensure that, as well as costing up every single decision that we as a country make on the budget, we're also going to be looking at whether or not the carbon emissions add up.
That's 2 minutes.
Okay, and we're also going to be building 100,000 homes per year that are going to be up to the highest grade on energy efficiency, which will cut bills for families, as well as bringing down our carbon emissions.
It's very easy for us to all reel off the list of things that we will do to help tackle the climate emergency, but we also have to work out how they're going to be paid for. And as I said earlier, the IMS have roundly criticised the spending plans of the Tory party and the Labour Party as simply not credible. We will invest 130 billion into capital infrastructure, 86 billion of which will be to help tackle the climate emergency. On transport, we'll invest in additional buses, and we will freeze rail fares to encourage people out of their cars. We'll also increase the amount of money that we spend on walking and cycling to 10% of the transport budget. We'll plant 60 million trees a year and protect habitats through a national capital fund. We'll spend £5 billion on flood defences and climate adaptation. And we'll also put a statutory duty on all local authorities to produce a zero carbon strategy, but we'll actually give them some money to do that. We'll extend the low emission zones and ensure that all private hire vehicles and new buses licensed to operate in urban areas are either ultra low or zero emissions by 2025. By 2030, we will produce 80% of our energy through renewable energy, and we will remove the restrictions that the Tories have introduced on wind and solar. We'll also ban fracking, and we'll end the fossil fuel subsidy. And all new homes that are built will have to be built with solar panels. We'll also cut energy bills and end fuel poverty for the least well-off by retrofitting buildings, and the least well-off will get that for free. And we'll also invest in cutting-edge technologies, particularly tidal and wave power. And finally, we will put £5 billion into a new green investment bank. It was an absolute outrage that the green investment bank that was brought in by the coalition government was then sold by the Tories.
Can I just
Yeah, Lucy and then...
Yeah, just want to say, I agree with John that the manifestos of both the Conservatives and Labour have been questioned by the IFS. We've been very, very open from the beginning about the spending that is needed for a green future. We're facing a climate emergency, and ultimately, when you're recovering from a war or going into war or recovering from a natural disaster, you don't. What you do is you spend and you invest in your infrastructure and invest so that you have a future. We're not going to have a future to be talking about if we don't spend now.
Net zero carbon emission by 2030 is actually unachievable. Remember, 2030 is only 11 years away. You can't switch off your car from today. You can't switch off your heating from today. So that is unachievable. Let me tell you what we have done. So far, since 2010, when the Conservative Party leading the government, we have already reduced greenhouse gas by 25%, which is the fastest in G20 countries. And we are going to invest further things, including all the green buses strategy, all the new low carbon technologies, and also other things to encourage the whole nation to reduce our carbons. And also bear in mind, as I said, we do need a country as a model, leading as example, to call other member states together, have these global actions. We can't just do on ourselves. We need a global action. So therefore, working together with other nations is also very, very important.
Very quickly, we Labour Party's produced, I think we're the only party that's produced a fully costed manifesto. The investment fund that we will create £400 billion investment fund. That's not part of the day-to-day spending. That's investment for the future. It seems that we're being accused of being both not ambitious enough and too ambitious. We need ambition. We need to address the scale of the problem. We need something like the capital transformation fund that we're proposing to invest in our future, and we have to do that because the cost of not acting is actually greater than the cost of acting.
The only thing that I was going to add, actually, I do agree with Lucy that I think our target of 2045 is not ambitious enough. I'm not convinced that we can reach it by 2030, but I would like to see us go further than 2045. But I think what we need to have is ensure that we've got an achievable target so that government doesn't just give up and think that, well, we're not going to achieve it, so why are we even going to bother trying?
Okay, thank you. The next question is one on public transport, which Sarah submitted. You have to ask it.
I've actually got a question about
Oh, yeah, no worries.
I don't want that.
You can have it. Go.
Oh, all right.
No, you go for it.
It's from personal experience, this one. As a family, we're trying to be green and use public transport. And this summer we looked into going to Europe on holiday by train, and it costs 4 times as much as a flight. We've got a trip to London coming up next month, and it costs 4 times as much to go by train as it does to go by car. Basically, I think the public are really keen to use public transport and choose green options, but it's economically impossible for most people to spend 4 times as much to take the green option. What are your government going to do so that the polluter pays? Because I don't see that it's not going to, basically tomorrow, the government could slap a tax on flights and the tax could then be used to subsidise the trains, and then people would then have that as a realistic option. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Our current system traps us into carbon-reliant forms of transport, which is stressful, damaging for the environment, damaging for our health. And I try to fly absolutely as little as possible, and always try to use public transport. I've never owned a car. But often that means that I'm telling my friends that, yeah, okay, I'm going to pay 3 times as much as you, and I'll be there 2 days after you get there. When I'm getting the train across Europe. We need to be investing in our railways. In terms of international travel in Europe, we need to be remaining in the EU in order to ensure that we can work with the European Union to build train systems across Europe so that people can travel sustainably. And then in the UK, we need to be investing in cycleways and walking, but also our train systems, and rather than just building one big train line between Manchester and London, or London and Birmingham, we need to be ensuring that we're connecting up all of the communities that at the moment cut off and completely reliant on cars. And also across, even just here in Manchester, making sure that people aren't just able to get from here to the city centre, but are also be able to travel between neighbourhoods properly on bus routes that are reliable and affordable, and that comes from bringing them back in public hands and investing in them properly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this question about public transportation. That's very important to ourselves. I think there are at least 2 pillars. One is talk about the train, one is talk about the bus. For the train, I think our North England has really been left behind in the last 4 decades. So therefore, as a government, we committed to invest £13 billion to redevelop the train systems in the north. Secondly, this decision needs to be made by you, by the people living in the north. So therefore, government committed to fund £260 million to set up transport of the north, allow the north people decide what is for you. Because we do remember the Northern Line crisis last summer, so we do not see that will happen again. And then back to the bus. Buses, more often people should use it, but I agree the bus fare is too expensive. Particularly in Manchester, in the last 10 years, it go up dramatically. I remember when I was students in University of Manchester, living in Owens Park, it's only £2 per week go to school, go to university, but now significantly high. So I think we need to have a fair, low fare systems, allow people can use it more often and also easily. Secondly, The bus also needs to reduce the emission, so therefore we encourage to have the green bus systems. That's why we invest into technology to have hydrogen bus or electricity bus. But it is not enough. We also invest into the national bus strategy, about £220 million to rebuild the whole bus network. Now, in the end, we also committed to develop something called super bus networks. We can then allow people to use it easily and also very low cost. So that is our strategy.
Thank you.
First and foremost, we've committed to freezing rail fares for 5 years. I think it's very laudable to be travelling to Europe on bike sharing rather than flying, but a lot of holiday destinations are significantly further away than maybe going to France or certain northern European countries. And I don't think people should be not able to fly at all when we go on holiday. We've actually proposed reform of the passenger duty system, because at the moment 15% of people take 70% of the flights. So we'd like to see a graduated system whereby people who are flying once a year to go on holiday pay less duty, and then frequent flyers are actually paying through the nose to make up for the fact that they're taking significant numbers of flights. I also think that we need to look at the subsidy system that we have about public transport. In London, there are huge subsidies of public transport, and unsurprisingly, because it's hell to drive around London and public transport is much better, lots more people use public transport. What we need is a fair system so that public transport is subsidised to the same level as in London in other parts of the country. Here we have a great Metrolink system, but people pay through the nose because it has to pay for itself. Whereas the light rail systems that we have, numerous light rail systems that we have in London, are all massively subsidised. It's not fair that London gets so much subsidy compared with everywhere else. It's not that surprising that people choose to go by car. When it's cheaper, it's often more reliable, not always, but often more reliable. And sometimes there isn't a public transport alternative. That's why we've committed to investing massively in bus services and cutting rail fares.
Thanks. Like you, I'm trying to be. I'm trying to choose more. I'm trying to be more green. I'm trying to make green choices in my transport. I gave up my car last year in order to use public transport and cycle. I'm somewhat fitter, not a lot, somewhat fitter. I use public transport all the time, but I'm lucky because I can do that, because we have where I live in Withington, we have a Metrolink line up the road and a very good bus service. And not everywhere is like that, so we need to invest in our public transport systems. Now, in terms of rail, we've said we'll take the railways back into public ownership, so that profits don't go to shareholders, but are reinvested in the system. And that will allow us not only to coordinate the system better, the rail network better, but will allow us to reduce train fares. We've committed to reducing fares for New Year. I agree with the other speakers. We need to invest in a full public transport system and a coordinated public transport system. And we need to invest in it to give people options other than flying. Now, I'm a strong supporter of HS2. We need to get people out of planes. People should not be flying between Manchester and London, and ideally not between Glasgow and London. And so we've committed to taking HS2 to Scotland, and also we're going to invest in HS3, what's called Crossrail for the north between Liverpool and Hull, to integrate the economies of those cities and to make sure we have a truly integrated public transport system. And that is the way to create the options for people to get out of their cars and onto public transport.
Yeah.
Sorry, only because I realised I didn't answer the question about the flying bit. And we would bring in our carbon tax that we're going to bring in would mean that aviation fuel was immediately more expensive, kind of bringing up the cost of flights. And we would also get rid of the tax exemptions that flights currently have. They've done domestic flights, and we've worked with the European Union to get rid of that internationally. But we would also bring in a frequent flyer levy, because ultimately we don't want this to be something where only the super rich can fly. As John said, it's the top few percent of taking the vast majority of flights. So we bring in a frequent flyer levy, which would increase the more flights you take.
Yeah.
Just add one more thing. I think one of the biggest frustrations is the obsession of some of the media about freezing fuel duty. I think if we look at the actual real cost of driving in comparison to public transport gets more expensive year on year. In real terms, the cost of driving has got cheaper and cheaper over the last few years. And actually, ending this freeze on fuel duty and investing that extra money in public transport would make a huge difference.
Okay. So we've now got a question about wealth and poverty, which Maria's going to ask for us.
Okay. Are the inequalities of wealth in the country acceptable? If not, what does your party plan to do about that?
Thank you for the question. This is a question really about how to fight against the poverty. I think I probably one of very credible individuals to talk about it. As I said, I come from China. China in the last 30 years make 800 million people out of poverty. So we definitely can learn something from it. In our records, we have to say Conservative Party did really well. If you look at since 2010, when we in the government, we make 3.7 million population more in the employment, and we reduce the unemployment rates by far the lowest since 1974. I think the key things behind this one is how we can solve this. It's really about economy and also jobs. Without strong economy, you can't create enough jobs. You can't allow people find something to do to feed themselves and then give them a place to live. We also introduced the minimum wage, which is 10.50 by 2024. That will be the biggest jump since we introduced the national minimum wage. And also people also talk about universal credits. I think that also very important issue in this poverty element. We have to say universal credit is very good in principle. However, in the administration-wise, it may not as good as we think. So therefore, we do need some additional change, allow people to have immediate benefit from this one. So, yeah, thank you very much.
I'm really surprised to hear our Conservative colleague here saying that when his party policies have literally killed tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people through their cuts to social services and the rollout of universal credit. We might have seen a stronger economy over the last few years in terms of literal GDP growth, but we've also seen poverty levels rise year on year, more and more children and adults using food banks. And whilst they claim to have been part of rising the minimum wage, lifting more working people out of poverty, 2/3 of the children that are in poverty in the UK have working parents. So there's a few issues here. First of all, we need more businesses to be paying a real living wage based on what people actually need to live to get by, not just trying to reach a percentage of median earnings. We need more social housing. One of the key reasons why people are tied in poverty is because so many people are tied in private renting, paying huge amounts to landlords, and the public sector is hemorrhaging money to those landlords. We need rent caps We need thousands of more social housing so that everyone who deserves one can get one. Financial security, that we believe in the Green Party, that financial security is the core basis of our society. It allows people to be healthy, it allows children to attain good grades in school, it allows us to combat crime, and it builds thriving communities. And therefore, we would tackle this head on, and we want to introduce a universal basic income, which would be a non-means tested payment to everyone, that would go up with, if you had disabilities or if you're on pensions. But what it would do is add that financial security to all people, so that people always have enough to get by, and so that people can rely on their government to be something that allows them to live a full and fulfilling life, rather than something that they live in fear of, with their benefits being taken away from them, and living in fear of being deported.
Jeff, you go next.
I think the question was is that kind of inequality acceptable? No, is the answer. Of the 14.3 million people living in poverty, 9 million are in houses where one adult works. So it's not just because people are out of work, we have in-work poverty, we have inequality rising. Real wages are still lower than before the financial crisis. But dividends paid to shareholders were about 85% at that time. So clearly we have a problem. Now Labour will introduce a real living wage of £10 an hour rapidly, rather than the government's sham living wage. But what we need to also is create a benefit system that supports people, a social security system worthy of the name, for those people who aren't in work. I have to say we need to reverse a number of the benefit cuts that were brought in by the coalition government and the Tory government, the bedroom tax, the benefits cap, the two-child limit, which is a disgrace, and the benefit freeze. And we're committed to creating a proper social security system that supports all of us if we're not in work. And we have a commitment in our manifesto. We will eradicate in-work poverty within the first term of the Labour government.
Lucy pitched my line from last night about the biggest cause of in-work poverty being housing. One of the biggest challenges is people paying extortionate rents when they're working, and we've committed to building 100,000 social homes every year, but also recognising that lots of people live in private rented accommodation as well, and we will raise the local housing allowance to cover the average rents in an area, because in some areas the local housing allowance doesn't even scrape the surface of the actual rents that people are paying. Many of the current benefit cuts from the Tories we will reverse. We will scrap the bedroom tax. We will reverse reinstate the independent living fund and reverse the ESA cuts. We'll also scrap the benefit cap and the two-child policy. But we'll also increase the amount that a carer can earn before they lose their carers allowance, because there are an awful lot of people who are carers who are ending up in poverty, and we would increase the amount that they can earn from £123 to £150. Because we recognise the role that so many carers make. On universal credit, we've promised an extra £6 billion into universal credit. When universal credit was first thought of, it had pretty much universal support across the political parties as a principle. The idea of having a single benefit is a pretty sound one. The trouble is that the implementation of universal credit and the actual amount of resources that you put into universal credit will either make or break it. We've committed that the extra money that we would put in would reduce the time for processing claims from 5 weeks to 5 days, because one of the biggest challenges is the fact that people are waiting so long for their money, and even when they get tax money, they then have to pay it back very quickly, which causes even more poverty.